He drew a circle that shut me out, heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle that took him in. These words by American poet Edwin Markham were the opening words to the children's chapel of my childhood, where we children sat on the carpet squares, sometimes in lines and sometimes in an ever-widening circle, with the director of religious education teaching us the core values of our Unitarian Universalist faith through story, song, and activity. The closest thing we had to rituals back then was the recitation of this poem. These were the years before lighting a chalice became ritualized and common practice in UU congregations. I was a child attending chapel services in the years before our principles were reformulated to remove sexist language, before they were radically changed from their original form to the precursor of how we know them today, when we removed man-only language, removed the assumption of race and class and religious superiority that was embedded in the original version, and we added our respect for the interdependent web of all existence. I was 14 years old when the newly agreed upon principles were adopted by the 1985 General Assembly. I remember vividly the wallet cards that congregation purchased to help members learn and share the newly adopted principles. And I remember the resistance and heated conversations that were had in the years leading up to that change. It was the year I entered high school in the congregation's youth group, still under the form of LRY, or Liberal Religious Youth. During my high school years, the group shifted from LRY to YRUU, or Young Religious Unitarian Universalists. A decade later, in 1995, the gray hymn book Singing the Living Tradition was released and became the new standard in our congregations. These are just a few of the transitions I've witnessed. Each of these transitions in our faith and approach to expressing our faith as individual transitions and collectively have been blessings in my life. Together, they have taught me that Unitarian Universalism truly is a living tradition, a faith grounded in an ever-revealing, ever-evolving understanding of ourselves and our role in the wider world. This lesson of change as foundational to our practiced faith has been a life-saving lesson and blessing for me, as has all that our faith has offered me. I sometimes casually say that Unitarian Universalism saved my life. I don't mean it figuratively. It literally has saved my life. I am an adoptee who had the privilege of meeting some of my biological family. Given the conservative Christianity that my birth mother practiced, I can only speculate at what hell my life would have been like had I been raised in her faith community. You see, I knew way back in kindergarten that my gender was not what it was assigned at birth, though it would take me almost 20 years before I had the words to articulate my understanding of myself. Nurtured into being by a congregation of people who loved me just as I am, who supported me with all of my quirks and stubbornness, who encouraged my creativity and innovation, who modeled complexity and community and change. This is what gave me the strength and courage to come out as transgender at a time when most of the people around me had never been exposed to the word, never mind had any sense of what it meant. It was a time when most trans and queer folks were isolated, living without the technologies that connect us today, and unable to be fully themselves and simultaneously be in mixed community. I was grateful and am still grateful to be raised in this faith that from the earliest of ages taught me that God loves me as I am and as I am becoming. and that members of my faith communities will learn how to and then do the often hard work of being uncomfortable as they learn new ways of moving in the world, especially if it means together we can draw a circle to invite more in. One of the gifts of Unitarian Universalism is that we understand we are coming into life midstream and have an obligation to those who came before us and those who will come after us, that we are enjoying the fruits of another's labors while also planting and tending the metaphorical seeds and sometimes physical seeds that those who come after us will also enjoy. For me, this is easier to remember when I am part of a multi-generational community where some of my friends are my age, while others are decades older than me, and now that I've aged enough, some are 40 years younger than me, where we seek the wisdom of the elders and yelders alike. At the age of 14, I officially signed the membership book at the First Parish in Framingham, Massachusetts, becoming a voting member of the congregation. I had been dedicated there as a baby, but taking this move into official membership felt important then and continues to be one of my most cherished life decisions. I am ever blessed to have been raised in a faith community that embraced me as a child, provided me opportunities and support as a teen, and continues to encourage me to grow as an adult. I am grateful for a theology and heritage that embraces liminal spaces and is simultaneously transient and permanent. Active participation in church worship has taught me the importance of ritual and storytelling, of sharing of ourselves and our life experiences. It has taught me how necessary community is, not only when disaster happens and we pool our resources together to help one another, but also when life is good and we celebrate together. I have learned the power of collective cries of outrage when the world's violence is too much to bear, through protests, rallies, and calls to action. Together, we can make more of a difference than any one of us alone could do. Throughout my childhood, I had ample opportunity to attend committee and congregational meetings, often because my mother worked for the church. Through witnessing the business of the church, I learned the importance of questioning how our decisions are grounded in and reflective of our values. Everything from where our toilet paper comes from to which businesses we choose to support through our patronage. I learned the intricacies of using Robert's Rules of Order, and later in life learned the nuanced benefits and challenges that such a form of governance brings. I was introduced to a large array of different ways to govern. Being part of this living tradition means that as uncomfortable as it often is, we are willing to confront our collective histories, telling the stories of struggle as well as the stories of success. It means accepting that often someone other than ourselves has more wisdom, more experience, more insight than we do personally. In April of 2011, I was asked to share my hopes for the future of our faith. At the time, I wrote the following: "Our faith is not an easy one to practice. It demands of us that we be in constant awareness and dialogue with the world. Unitarian Universalism requires religious engagement, not just when it is convenient or easy, but in every moment. We have a rich history and a complicated theology. We have a complicated history and a rich theology. One of the greatest strengths we have is that we offer an image of life that it is in motion and pluralistic. Through our focus on community and covenant, we learn that the holy takes place in our connections to and with one another. At times, there seems to be a disconnect between the church school lessons I learned as a youngster and how we adults live out our Unitarian Universalist values. The Unitarian Universalism of my childhood taught me that with diversity comes strength, that through embracing our differences, we can better understand our world around us. Yet my years working in and with our congregations have taught me that more often than not, this is more theory than practice, that at times we seek to be with those just like ourselves. And yet, I have witnessed our congregations make tremendous progress in embracing this diversity and changing the ways they are in the world in order to accommodate a beloved member of their existing community. My hope for our future is that it does not take someone already within our community to inspire us to change our ways to be more inclusive and affirming. My hope is that we are willing to change in order to greet all with open hearts, that we are willing to create a circle, to widen a circle that welcomes those who are not here yet. My hope for the next 50 years is that our congregations and covenanted communities continue to engage in holy discourse around diversity and affirmation. My hope is also that we continue to share our presence with the world, exemplifying that it is possible to embrace the pluralistic nature that is already existing in life. 11 years later, that is still my hope. That and more. I am hopeful that we continue to build communities where we joyfully acknowledge the pluralism and diversity among us, and we work together to dismantle the systems that have historically prevented some of us from flourishing. I am hopeful that we will continue to transform our congregations and covenanted communities into places of liberation, sharing our good news with the world in ways that invite folks in and allow us to be transformed. Partnering with others to help bend the arc of the universe towards justice, remembering that we may not have all the answers, but in partnership with others, we can find and learn what is needed of us. Organizer and writer Grace Lee Boggs asks, "What time is it on the clock of the world?" Now is the time to imagine, to story, to organize our communities into places of resilience, justice, and love. Now is the time to focus on body autonomy, reproductive rights, disability justice, racial justice, queer justice, economic justice, environmental justice, justice in all its forms. Now is the time to ground ourselves theologically and live our faith boldly in the public sphere. Now is the time for no more nice. Now is the time to be tender. Tender like fiercely fighting for the soft parts of us, trying to make it the possibilities of right relationships, the justice that changes everything, everything roots deep. Our faith needs to continue to work on developing a clear articulation of our beliefs and our values. Our communities are hungry for stories that anchor us to purpose and provide the buoyancy needed to be in the long-term work for justice. We need to return to our physical bodies, remembering that bodies are awesome and each one of us different from another. We know that a primary tool of white supremacy culture is to keep us disconnected from our bodies, and that we are yearning for embodied spiritual practices. We are blessed by a Unitarian Universalism that is unconditionally committed to dismantling white supremacy culture, that from its very beginning has lived into and modeled a commitment to changing to meet the needs of our times. Sometimes we've done that well, and often we've had to repair relationships in the process. And yet we are blessed by a Unitarian Universalism that can be boldly inclusive, unapologetically queering what it means to be a people of faith, and willing to change our physical and spiritual spaces so that we continue to widen the circle of who is and who will be among us. And so today, my friends, I invite you to join me, to live into being a part of the living tradition, to live our faith out loud and unapologetically, to bring into being a world of justice and care using righteous anger and holy, tender love. I invite you to always say yes in the moments when your heart thumps and your palms are sweaty, to say yes at the intersection of excitement and fear, and then do the work to learn the necessary skills, to grow in your roles, nurturing the next generation, ensuring that their path is not as hard or challenging to forge as was yours. I invite you to be bold where boldness is needed and gentle when gentleness is warranted, to move with a humility that reminds yourself that what you know is but one perspective, to remain open to changing as your assumptions are challenged and your knowledge grows. We live in an imperfect and hurting world. Let us be witnesses to the pain and warriors against the injustices, remembering that the power for change exists in communities working together, that none of us alone can make the lasting change the world needs. Let us always remember to pause in celebration of our successes, to mourn our losses, and be mindful to learn from it all. May we all cherish the blessings of this faith that expects personal connections, embraces communal transformation, and offers holy love. Amen. Ashe, and blessed be.